as you guys turn to the book of Matthew, I wanted to do a couple of optical illusions with you, okay? So, I'm going to put a picture on the screen, and I just want you to call out the first thing you see, okay? So you should only call out one thing. The first thing you see. No, just call it out loud. Okay?
Sun.
We ready?
Bird. A duck.
How many of y'all see, by show of hands, a bird?
I see a key.
Okay. How many of y'all see a bunny?
I see a key.
A duck is a bird.
I see a duck.
Okay. How many of y'all see a bunny? Okay, so we've got some that see a duck, some that
I see a bunny.
Okay, ready? Next one. Here we go. Call out what you see.
Tree. A blue bonnet.
Okay. How many of you, show of hands, see a tree?
Are they smoking?
Tree? What? Not quite. How many of y'all see two faces?
Me.
Okay, so see, we've got some of y'all that see the tree, some of you that see the faces. Last one here, call out what you see. Ready?
Two faces almost kissing.
A wine glass.
Okay. All right, how many of y'all see a glass, like a goblet? How many of y'all see that?
I see blue.
My mom drinks a lot.
Okay. How many of y'all see the faces?
She needs wine.
That stuff.
Perfect. Okay, so what I want you to see about those optical illusions is that there was no wrong answers, right? Like some of you saw faces first, some of you saw the trees first, some of you saw a duck, some of you saw a bunny, okay? Those weren't wrong answers. Those were both in the pictures, right? That's why we call those an optical illusion, because you see different things if you are different people. And actually tonight, I'm going to talk to you about a passage of scripture that is talking about just that. Like seeing things one way, but actually shifting your mind to see the same thing a different way. Okay, so tonight the challenge I want to give to you is to think about what you see in your life currently, and then how you can change your perspective to see those same things in your life as God sees them. Okay, so just like when we see these illusions, the first thing that we see may not be the only thing that's actually there. So if you are in Matthew, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 6 tonight. I want to give you a little bit of background before we hop in. So this is Jesus' most famous sermon. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, so if you've been in church, you have probably heard pieces of this sermon a lot. Okay, so this is Jesus' most famous sermon. And here in chapter 6, he is picking up this conversation about talking about treasure. Okay, so as we read this, we're going to start in verse 19 and we're going to read through verse 23. Okay. I'm going to have it on the screen, so if you would follow along with me. Starting in verse 19, Jesus says this: "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Verse 22, "The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light is in you, if then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness?" Okay? This may sound a little bit confusing. This may sound a little bit like odd, and that has nothing to do with generosity. But bear with me for a second as we try to unpack this, okay? So remember, we've talked in week 1 about the Bible was not actually written in English. Okay, the Bible was written in 3 different languages, and so we have this translation in English, but you have to actually do a little bit of a word study to get the full picture of what Jesus is talking about here. Okay, so in the original language, this word healthy wasn't just healthy like we think about it, right? So in this passage, Jesus is talking about if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. When we think healthy, we think of, I go to the doctor, everything is good. Like I can breathe, I can sleep, I can eat, I don't have an upset stomach, my head doesn't hurt, I'm healthy, right? This is not just the general description in the original language. Okay, so when Jesus is talking, the word here for healthy actually implies being generous. Right? So Jesus is saying, when you recognize that Jesus is actually saying generous instead of healthy, this takes on a little bit different of a meaning. Right? So Jesus is saying that if your eyes can focus in and see the needs of the world and recognize that God has called you to do something about it, then your whole body will be full of light. Right? Jesus is saying if you see people in their need and you're generous to help fill that need, your body will be full of light. So the question we have to ask ourselves tonight in this next piece of spiritual habits is, do we have eyes to recognize generous opportunities? Like how do we look for ways to be generous? Because according to Jesus' own words, if we live generously, then we are full of life. If we live generously, then we are doing what we have been called to do as Christians. So again, the question is, how often are we looking for ways to be generous? Now, I don't know how many of you guys have ever gone live on social media. Give me a show of hands if you ever just went live. Okay, a couple. All right, so if you guys go live, or if you follow people that go live, it's actually a really cool insight into like somebody's like personal life, right? It's raw, it's unfiltered, sometimes it's a little awkward, right? I love whenever like the famous people that I follow, when they go live on something, because you get like a little snapshot into their life, right? So if you've ever gone live before, it can be a lot of fun. It can be really awkward. There was one time I had a friend of mine who I knew was about to announce a big thing. He had his own business and he was like going to run this promotion. And so I figured I would hop onto his live and help him out. For the first 4 or 5 minutes of his live, it was really awkward. Like it was me, somebody I didn't know, and this guy. And he kept like saying, I'm going to wait till a couple people hop on. I'm going to wait till a couple people hop on. Nobody ever really hopped on. So we were just like sitting there and this guy is just like being really awkward and not telling anybody what we hopped on to actually listen to. Right? It can be awkward. If you've never experienced that awkwardness, try to go live sometime. You'll find that it's very awkward. Sometimes when you go live, maybe like that, even if you don't go live, if your phone is accidentally turned on and it's facing like the front-facing camera and you see your face, let's be honest in the room. Sometimes we see that and we're like, oh gosh, I didn't know I looked like that. Right? We've all been there. Sometimes when you go live and you hop on, you're like, oh, do I really look that tired? Yes, you do. And that's okay, because we've all been in that same space. Like going live is really a mixed bag of fun. It can be really good, it can be really awkward, you could look really good, you could look really not so good. I want you to realize that the first ever social media was actually called Periscope, okay? Periscope was actually before I had social media, it was before like MySpace, and Periscope's entire thing was just going live. Okay, so this is like an updated model. Actually, Twitter bought Periscope a while back, and so they're no longer a thing. But the first ever like mainstream social media outlet was called Periscope. And the only thing you could do was go live. That was it. So what it would always ask before you went live, every time you opened Periscope and every time you began to go live, Periscope would ask the question, what are you seeing now? Like every time. What are you seeing now? So like when you're on B-Reel and it says 3, 2, 1, wait until you actually post, you'd open Periscope and it would say, what are you seeing now? I want you to think of that question. What are you seeing now? Because you guys realize that like waking up and getting out of bed and dealing with your siblings and dealing with your parents and going to school and dealing with your friends is just like going live. Like you can't really hide from that. Like you get what you get. That's called going live. So if we go live, I want you to begin to ask yourself, what am I seeing now? Think about it. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? I mean, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is probably grab your phone because you want to be sure you catch up on all the things that you missed, right? Maybe you're the one that likes to sleep in as long as you possibly can. You sleep in and you make maybe your siblings or your parents a little angry every morning because you have to have those extra 6 minutes of sleep. Maybe you're the one that expects breakfast to be made for you and ready to go on your time, even though you've never bothered to help actually make it. Or maybe you're the one that leaves your bathroom a mess, your clothes everywhere, the kitchen a mess, all because it's about you and making sure you get what you need done before you go out the door. And then, you get to school and you rush past everybody you don't know because you are trying to get to your circle of friends. Like you guys have your hangout spot. Right? And so if you're the first one there, so that you don't feel awkward, you probably pull your phone out and you swipe, you scroll, maybe you take one of those like awkward selfies, maybe, right? You are entirely wrapped up in your world. Like it's all about you. And this is your daily routine. From the moment you wake up to the moment you get to school to the moment you get into class, your entire routine is shaped around you. I want to encourage you, you're not alone in this. I am 29 years old and there are still times I have to catch myself because I can go through my morning routine where everything is about me. It's very me focused. What if I told you that maybe when you sleep in late, maybe when your focus is only on yourself in the morning, it actually causes tension to those people that are in your circle. It might cause tension between you and your siblings. It might cause tension between you and your parents. It might cause tension between you and somebody at school. So when you get out of the bed in the morning, I want you to ask this question: what am I seeing now? Like, actually think, what am I seeing now? When you get to school, ask yourself the question, what am I seeing now? Like, if all you ever do is just have your head down, your headphones in, you just zoom past people, maybe you're overlooking somebody that God has put in your path. Maybe some of those people that you rushed by to get to your friend circle, they need you. Maybe they're alone, maybe they're hurting, maybe they're depressed, they don't feel like they belong anywhere. And all you do is just go right by them because you are focused on what you are doing. Ask yourself that question, what am I seeing now? I think if we actually took time and began to ask ourselves that question of what am I seeing now, you would find two things. You would find that there is people in your life that have a real need. A real need. And that need can sometimes be met by you. Let me say that again. When you start asking the question of what am I seeing now, I think God gives you opportunities to see people who have needs in ways that you can fill it. When we do those two things, when we see a need, when we go and we fill it, we're actually training ourselves to be generous. Jesus says, you train yourself to be generous, and you are generous, your whole body is now full of life. So let's think about this in the previous example. Maybe that's me getting up a couple minutes earlier. That way my parents don't have to do all the tension and all the stress of getting me up out of bed. Maybe it's taking care of breakfast for my siblings or myself, or cleaning up after myself. That way somebody else doesn't have to do it. Maybe it's taking one of my headphones out and maybe actually looking and making eye contact with people as I walk through hallways. It's a little scary, I know. Maybe it's something bigger than that. Maybe it's using your talents to serve here at church. Maybe it's taking time to actually be in relationship and conversation with people who need it. Maybe for some of us it is about treasure. Maybe we do have a job, maybe we do make money, but our money is always spent on us. Like, what if we actually gave our money back? What if we found a church that we could give to? What if we found an organization? What if we found something that we actually cared deeply about and that money could be helped to help others? And perhaps, I think maybe for all of us, it's focusing on people that are around us. It's focusing on our friends. It's focusing on the people that are in our small groups to see how we can actually be intentional and pray for them. Whatever it is, I want you to know that those things that you feel, those things that you begin to see, are because God is placing those on your heart. God is placing those on your mind and saying, hey, here is a need, and you can fill it. So I want to talk about, lastly, I want to talk about three things. When we talk about generosity, I want you to think about it in three different avenues, okay? I want you to think about time, talent, and treasure. Notice treasure is last, okay? I know when you go to church, people start talking about generosity and giving, especially like on a Sunday morning, people always go to money. Okay, I want you to think of time, talent, and then treasure. Okay, because we all have time, we all have talent, and one day we all will have treasure of some kind. Okay, think of it like this. And I want to give a shout out to a couple people who I know are already doing this. When I think of time, I think of those of you who actually serve in kids. There's several of you who serve here at Awaken on Sunday mornings. You serve in kids. That is you giving up your time to help somebody. And although you may not really understand just how integral your part is in that, it's huge. Today in staff meeting, I'm sitting and I'm listening to Stephanie, who's our kids director, just talk about how much she values people who volunteer and serve in kids. And that's some of y'all. Some of y'all do that. And although that's great for Stephanie, I want you also to realize that the time that you're giving up in that space, even though you may not realize it, is impactful for the 2 and the 3 and the 4 and the 5-year-olds that you're getting to hang out with on Sunday morning. Time is valuable. We talked about it a little bit last week. We talked about spiritual giftings. Time is valuable. So think about how can I use my time to be generous. Think about your talents. Think about all the things that you are talented in. I'm not asking you to brag on yourself, but there is something that you know that you are good at. And if there's nothing that you think you're good at, come find one of our leaders and we'll point it out to you what your talent is, because all of you have talent, right? If you've ever been here on a Sunday morning, you see the people who worship on stage, they are sharing their talent. Like, they don't get paid to do that. Like, they are sharing their talent to lead us in worship, that way we can experience God through corporate worship, right? They are giving up their talent to serve generously. So think about your talent. Think about how can I use my talent to serve generously. I don't know what that is, but if you start to pray and ask to use your talent to be full of generosity, God's going to give you a way. And lastly, let's talk about treasure. So we have time, talent, and treasure. I know some of you that do have jobs do give your treasure. Like, you do give money. And I know this because I know that last year when we went to camp, I know there was some of y'all, some of you who have been here, some of your siblings that gave money so that people could go to camp. Like, you bought frozen yogurt so that way you and other people could go to camp. Some of you gave money to cover other kids' places to go to camp. Like, you guys realize that you have already begun to use your treasure. Some of you who have cars and who pay for gas are using that treasure to bring your friends to church. Like, that is you using your treasure. Now, that's a great thing. So when you think of things like time, talent, and treasure, it doesn't have to wait until you're 25 years old and you actually have like a real job. Side note, you can be 25 and not have a real job, okay? I'm just gonna throw that out there. You don't have to wait until you're older to start doing time, talent, and treasure. You can start doing it right now. Every single one of you in this room can live this generous life. So I'm going to leave you with one more verse. It's found in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8. And it says, God can pour on the blessings in astonishing ways, so that you are ready for anything and everything. More than just ready to do what needs to be done. You see, God is able to bless you. He gives you what you need so that you can answer the call of what He has for you to do. So the question is, are your eyes generous? Are you looking and seeing things the way God has you and wants you to see them? Imagine what your schools will look like. Imagine what your friend groups will look like. Imagine what your families will look like if you started living and seeing things through that generous lens. So in your small groups tonight, you're actually going to talk and chat about ways that you can use time, talent, and treasure. So maybe you're stuck. Maybe you're like, oh, I can think of time, but I can't think of talent or treasure. Hopefully you sitting in your group and talking, hearing from your leaders and how they do time, talent, treasure, maybe you'll start to get some ideas. But I want to encourage you this week, think time, talent, treasure. How can I do those things to give back to God? Because God has actually given all those things to me. Okay, let's pray. Dear God, thank you for the opportunity that we have to give back to you. Thank you that you have given us time. Thank you that you have given all of us certain talents. And thank you that you have given some of us treasure and treasures to come. So we just thank you for all the good things that you give us. Remind us that they are yours anyways, and so we should give back freely. We love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name I pray.